hit that thumbs up button, man. So Ja Morant, the Memphis Grizzlies have suspended him indefinitely. They're talking about giving him that Gilbert Arenas treatment, probably 50 game suspension. Bottom line, Memphis Grizzlies, they stick a fork in their season. It's over. That's gonna impact the rest of their regular season, the playoffs, and probably next year going into the start of the next season. And Ja Morant has deactivated his social media like we all expected him to, and he put out a sincere apology about how he needs to get his life together. Paul Pierce, NBA legend, most unorthodox looking player you'll ever see, not a tone of muscle. Never been a big Paul Pierce fan, but he was a good player. But he just wasn't one of those dominant guys because he played in the era where, hell, he came out in the AI era, then he played the whole Kobe era and the LeBron era. Paul Pierce, we all know, was on ESPN a couple years ago, got kicked off because he was on Instagram wilding one night, having a good time. The difference between him having a good time at his house, smoking weed, being retired 10 years after his retirement, completely different than a guy with an active shoe deal and a $200 million contract who's 22 years old. But Paul Pierce got on Twitter and said something really dumb and irresponsible. He made it all about gun protection and brought up the fact that he was stabbed in Boston back in 2002. And I remember that. He was. And it's like, but ain't nobody stabbing or coming after Ja Morant. The NBA, like Stephen A. and them said, they got FBI, they got undercover cops, they got all kind of people out here to protect these players. You don't need the blicky with you if you on the team bus. I'm pretty sure they got these players and these staff members are very well protected. So that excuse that, oh, why can't a man have a gun to protect himself and his family? Yeah, you can. But you're talking about, remember, they traveled with this. They were in Denver Friday night. I watched the game. And then an hour or two later, he's on Instagram Live waving guns. I'm like, hold up. You flew private back to Memphis that fast? No, this fool traveled with that gun from Tennessee to Denver. Now you got a traveling firearm issue. You're not supposed to bring firearms to NBA arenas. You just had 2 firearm incidents up until this point with his friends. And Paul Pierce is trying to make it seem like, well, the boy is just trying to protect himself. I'm like, no, Paul, you've been in this. You don't need to do all of that. You got your own personal PTSD issues because you got poked up in a club. That was a direct a target. He was a direct target. Nobody is directly targeting Ja Morant. Ja Morant lives in one of the most dangerous cities in the world. If somebody wanted to put something on his head by now, they would have. Even though we know he's way out in the suburbs somewhere. But to hear Paul Pierce, I'm like, no, Paul, you need to call him, be a mentor, be a big bro. Don't sit here and try to justify what he did. That was stupid. That was dumb. And if Nike is going to drop Kyrie Irving for retweeting something, you don't think they're going to drop this dude for flashing the blicky on Instagram? Come on now. And Kyrie is a way more established player than Ja Morant. Champion and everything. Movies, all of that. So, you know what I mean? Sometimes people got to fall on their face to see what they really have to know that they lost it. And unfortunately, that's what happened to him. You know, but Paul Pierce is making it seem like, oh, it's just a protection thing. It's like, no, bro. Like, even so, I mean, hell, I remember Von Miller smoking weed thinking it was all good. The NFL came down on him. You can't do that just because it's legal where you live. I mean, we all know how guns is in the South, but I mean, your job title and what you do, where you live at, is completely different. And you're traveling, bringing a gun he brought the gun on the private plane to the arena. You know what I mean? Like, this is worse than Gilbert. Remember Gilbert Arenas was bringing guns in the locker room? At least that was in the Wizards' home locker room. Like, this is beyond next level stupidity right here. And Paul Pierce didn't do himself any favors by adding his 2 cents. That was really stupid. I wonder if he would have kept that same energy had he still been on ESPN as a live analyst. Because they was going in on him. I mean, Jalen Rose, Stephen A., Mike Wilbon, the typical usuals, was scolding him all weekend about his decisions and his bad choices. But yeah, Paul Pierce, Uncle Paulie has come to the defense, man. Let me know what y'all think. Does Paul Pierce have a point, or is he just running his mouth?